I know my ABCs, I know my blues and greens, I know my 1, 2, 3s, and everything in between. I also can't sing. Hi everyone, welcome back to this Saturday's Walk and Talk. Today I want to talk to you guys about homework. And no, this doesn't mean that I'm expecting you to do homework with your kids where you're doing math worksheets and stuff like that, because I know parents don't like doing homework, I know kids don't like doing homework, and I know for a fact that teachers don't like assigning homework. So the reason why I'm bringing up homework and singing you silly songs is because I'm trying to get your attention around meaningful learning. Now I know that we have your kids for 5.5 to 6 hours a day, and the expectation is that we educate your kids and fill in the holes and we get them through so they can read, write, and do arithmetic. The problem is that schools have changed a lot. And even back in the day, I'm gonna age myself again, kids did homework and there were still expectations on parents to do some meaningful learning at home with their kids. In classrooms today, we are seeing an abundance of behavior issues. We're seeing an abundance of kids who are not motivated, like intrinsically motivated. We're seeing a lot of kids who can't persevere, who don't have the resiliency to work through things. We see a lot of kids who get distracted. We see a lot of kids who are sleep deprived, all of those things. So for a teacher in today's system, it is incredibly difficult to fill in the holes if a kid comes into school or gets into their classroom and they have gaps and they're behind in their reading, writing, or arithmetic. And so that's why I'm bringing up the point of meaningful learning, because it seems to be something that's disappearing. And so you're probably wondering what I mean by meaningful learning. So by meaningful learning, I'm talking about singing the song that I sang, but a lot better, of course. I'm talking about reading your kids bedtime stories, or just reading to your kids in general. I have kids who often come to me and they're upset because their parents won't read to them if they get a new book or if they go to the library. You know, kids still get excited about scholastics, but they take their books home and their parents aren't reading to them anymore. I'm talking about practicing letter sounds and recognizing letters, and you know, when you drive down the street and you see signs for stores and reading the signs with your kids. I'm talking about playing rhyming games with your kids and singing songs that have rhyming in them, because that helps. When you're driving down the street, reading signs like Starbucks and McDonald's and having kids to try to figure out what letters are on the signs and counting everything that you possibly can see, identifying colors, trying to identify patterns and shapes, playing board games with your kids, playing memory games with your kids. What's that one game? You know, the game where you have to try to guess the character, if they have a mustache or if they have blonde hair or blue eyes, or you know that game? But games like that. And so the reason why I'm bringing up meaningful learning is because it's missing. Our kids are coming into school with these gaps. And if you hear your teacher saying that your kid is struggling, please don't just put the onus on the school. We have learning assistance programs, we have interventionists, we have systems in place where we try to intervene at the right time and provide small group work or individual instruction. But the problem is the system is underfunded, and it is hard for us to keep up, especially in today's day and age where kids are coming in with the lack of skills that they used to have. One of the videos you should refer back to is my video where I talked about kids coming into school with communication deficits because parents are on their phone too much. You know, another thing that you can relate meaningful learning to, and you might understand this a little bit better, is like when you put your kids into sports. Let's just say you put your kid into swimming lessons, for example. If you depend on your kids learning to swim just through a half an hour swimming lesson twice a week without taking them to public swimming, your kids are going to have a difficult time learning to swim because they need to practice those skills. Just like if your kid's on a basketball team or a hockey team, there's practices, there's games, but coaches and teachers can only do so much. And these kids still have to practice outside of school. They have to practice outside of whatever sport it is they're playing, and then they will excel. You know, we're seeing too many kids coming into school now, can't sing the ABC song, can't even recognize the letter A, can't even print their name. When I first started in teaching 25 years ago, it was rare to have a kindergarten come in who couldn't write out their name or print out their name. It was rare. You know, it was rare for a kid to not know their last name. It was rare for a kid to not be able to sing the alphabet. And today, it's disappearing. My plea is to not think about learning as homework, but to think about learning outside of school as meaningful teaching, meaningful learning as a part of what you need to do as a parent. Just like when I talked about building manners, teaching your kids right from wrong, teaching your kids how to learn how to have work ethic. If you go back and look at my videos, I'm constantly talking about behavior and what you could do to develop grit and perseverance and resilience and manners. And, you know, teaching your kids to do right from wrong, helping you understand that you need to get off your cell phone because it's affecting communication. So this is the same thing. I think what's happening is we're losing sight of the fact that part of parenting and part of our job as parents is to still have that meaningful learning. You know, we need to be reading to our kids before bed. We need to be singing the alphabet song. We need to be counting to 10. We need to be using blocks, but we need to be doing those things. Even board games. I don't know how many kids even play board games anymore. But these are the things that we have to do because that meaningful learning, not homework, is going to help your kids learn to read and write and do arithmetic. But my intent isn't to point a finger at you parents. My intent is to just remind you that there's little things that you can do to help your kids be successful in school. Little things like singing songs. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Won't you sing with me? I think that's how it goes. Anyways, parents, my point is that meaningful learning is super important. Along with teaching your kids manners, along with teaching your kids work ethic, and along with teaching your kids right from wrong, you know, all of those things that I talked about in my videos. You know, the importance of getting your kids outside to play, all of those things are super important, but it's also important to practice counting, to practice math, practice letters, practice printing your name, get pencils in their hand, get them off the iPads. Develop those fine motor skills by giving them crayons and pencil crayons and buying coloring books, all of those wonderful things. So please don't take this the wrong way. It is our job as educators to make sure that we're teaching your kids to read, write, and do math. But I gotta tell you, it's getting harder and harder for us to fill those gaps, especially when it's not happening at home. So please, meaningful learning, okay? Meaningful learning. And have some fun with your kids, because it is fun. And on that note, peace out.